If you still think Citizen is just an entry-level brand, that idea might not survive this video. For years, it's been seen as the safe option. Reliable, affordable, practical. And yes, that reputation was earned. But here's what most people haven't noticed. Citizen has been quietly building watches with serious specs, sharper finishing, and real wrist presence. The problem isn't quality, it's perception. So today, we're breaking down 5 Citizen models that challenge that old narrative, from professional dive tools to titanium automatics and modern eco-drive pieces that feel far more premium than expected. Let's start with one that proves toughness doesn't need a luxury price tag. If you still associate Citizen with basic, this is the watch that challenges that instantly. The Promaster Eco-Drive Diver 300M wasn't designed to follow trends. It wasn't made to look flashy. It was engineered to do a job. And you feel that the second you handle it. The case has weight, not unnecessary bulk, just density that feels intentional. The bezel turns with firm, precise resistance. The markers are large, legible, and purpose-driven. Even the finishing feels more controlled than most expect in this segment. Nothing feels rushed. Then there's the spec that immediately stands out, 300 meters of water resistance. That's not just a small step above 200 meters. It pushes this watch into a more serious professional category. It's built to handle real pressure without pretending to be something it's not. But the real advantage is inside. Citizen's eco-drive movement removes one of the biggest ownership hassles. No battery swaps, no daily winding, no stress if you leave it off for a few days. Light powers it, and it simply keeps going. That kind of reliability changes the experience of wearing it. On the wrist, it feels substantial but controlled. The proportions are balanced. It sits planted and secure, giving you that reassuring tool watch solidity without feeling oversized. And this is where perception shifts. When you compare it to other divers in the same range, you often notice small compromises. Inconsistent bezel feel, lighter construction, finishing that feels slightly off. The Promaster doesn't present those weaknesses so easily. It doesn't come across like an entry-level piece. It feels like a professional instrument that just happens to be accessible. And that's exactly why it earns the first spot on this list. If you still believe Citizen only makes simple, budget-friendly watches, this model shifts that idea almost immediately. The Promaster Sky AT8300 doesn't aim for minimalism. It embraces complexity, and it does it with confidence. At first glance, the dial looks loaded. Subdials, scales, aviation-style markers, layers of information. But look closer, and it doesn't feel chaotic. It feels organized, structured. Each element serves a function rather than just filling space. This isn't decoration, it's instrumentation. And the technology behind it reinforces that identity. The AT8300 is radio-controlled, syncing with atomic time signals in multiple regions for exceptional accuracy. It offers world time functionality designed for real travel use. And, like other high-end Citizens, it runs on eco-drive, powered by light, eliminating battery swaps and daily winding. That combination changes the ownership experience. Watches with this much functionality often feel oversized or overwhelming on the wrist. The Promaster Sky manages to stay controlled. The case feels solid without becoming cumbersome. The bracelet carries reassuring weight, and the finishing is cleaner than most expect from a highly technical tool watch. And this is where perception shifts again. Entry level usually implies simplified, basic, stripped back. This watch is none of those things. It feels engineered with intent. It feels like aviation equipment adapted for the wrist, not a fashion piece pretending to be technical. It doesn't present itself as a starter watch. It presents itself as precision gear that just happens to remain accessible. And that distinction is exactly why it belongs on this list. If you assume Citizen can't deliver refinement, this is the model that challenges that assumption quickly. The Super Titanium Automatic NJ0180 doesn't depend on oversized dimensions or extreme specifications to stand out. Its strength is subtler than that. It's about material, balance, and execution. At first glance, it appears clean and modern, understated, controlled. But the moment you put it on the wrist, the Super Titanium changes the experience. It's noticeably lighter than stainless steel, yet it doesn't feel hollow. The surface feels smoother, more refined. And thanks to Citizen's hardening treatment, it offers impressive scratch resistance, something that adds real long-term confidence. Then you start noticing the finishing. The brushing is even and deliberate. The case edges feel defined without being sharp. The dial has depth without unnecessary clutter, and the blue tone carries a richness that feels more mature than many expect from the brand. Nothing about it feels rushed. And importantly, this is automatic. For many enthusiasts, that mechanical movement adds legitimacy. Inside, you get a dependable in-house Citizen automatic caliber built for steady daily wear. It's not about flashy claims, it's about consistency. That mechanical presence changes the personality of the watch. On the wrist, it feels lighter than it looks, but never fragile. The bracelet flows comfortably, the proportions remain balanced, and the overall impression leans closer to mid-range Swiss competition than to entry-level positioning. And that's where the perception shift becomes clear. This isn't a loud statement piece. It's a quietly confident watch made with better materials and cleaner execution than most people expect. It doesn't feel like a compromise. It feels like Citizen confidently operating in a more refined space, and doing it convincingly. And that's exactly why it earns its place on this list. In this price range, many chronographs focus on looking bold. This one focuses on feeling solid. The Citizen Funkchronograph AT8238 doesn't simplify its design to play it safe. The dial is layered, detailed, and aviation-inspired, with multiple subdials, sharp indices, and clear functional separation. But instead of feeling crowded, it feels organized. There's structure behind the complexity. At first glance, it looks technical. In hand, it feels deliberate. The case carries a noticeable presence without becoming oversized. The pushers respond with firm, mechanical feedback. The bracelet has weight and stability, avoiding that hollow feeling some accessible chronographs struggle with. It doesn't feel decorative. It feels purposeful. That distinction matters. Chronographs at this level sometimes lean too heavily on shine and visual drama to compensate for weaker execution. The AT8238 doesn't fall into that trap. The finishing is measured. Brushed and polished surfaces transition cleanly. The overall design feels controlled rather than exaggerated. Behind it all, Citizen's EcoDrive system powers the watch. That means no battery changes, no winding routine. Just consistent performance supporting a complication that's often maintenance-heavy in mechanical form. On the wrist, it delivers energy without chaos, confident without being loud, technical without becoming theatrical. And this is where perception shifts again. A brand associated with affordability isn't always expected to deliver a convincing chronograph experience, yet this model feels complete, engineered, properly resolved. It doesn't present itself as a starter sports watch. It feels like a modern, capable chronograph that simply happens to be more accessible than most people assume. And that's exactly why it earns its place here. People usually associate real innovation with high-end luxury brands. They don't expect it here. The Citizen EcoDrive 365 doesn't stand out because it's oversized or visually aggressive. It stands out because of what it prioritizes: efficiency, longevity, and everyday practicality. The name tells part of the story: extended power reserve, longer operation with minimal interruption. This isn't a watch built for constant adjustment. It's built to keep going in the background of real life. And that focus changes the experience. Visually, the design stays controlled. Clean dial layout, sharp markers, balanced proportions. Nothing feels cluttered or overly decorative. It doesn't chase attention. It relies on clarity. Underneath, EcoDrive technology does what it's known for. Light powers the movement. No battery replacements. No winding habit. No maintenance routine you have to think about. It runs consistently and quietly. That seamless reliability becomes the real luxury. On the wrist, it feels composed. The case sizing is measured rather than oversized. The bracelet feels secure without unnecessary heft. Everything about it suggests refinement through restraint. And this is where perception shifts once more. Accessible pricing is often linked to compromise, but the EcoDrive 365 doesn't feel like a simplified version of something better. It feels optimized. It doesn't compete through flash or spectacle. It competes through consistency. And in a market where many watches promise complexity, that kind of disciplined execution feels unexpectedly premium.